Welcome back to day 4 of the Zoey Sewalong. We are going to be starting off by doing option 2 for the strap and side seam. Your Zoey should be looking like the picture below. Essentially, you should have already done one line of stitching on each of your straps, attaching them to the front and the back of your Zoey. If you have not, go back to the sew-along videos for day 3 and make sure that you have done this step before proceeding to day 4. Now we're going to fold our front around to the back with right sides touching, and we're going to pin the strap while it's still open, and then also the side seams. Be extra careful that all of the seam allowances are pressed in towards the band. So that includes the very top folded edge that's folded down by 3/8 of an inch, and then also the seam allowances at the bottom where the strap meets the armhole. That also needs to be pushed up towards the band, just like this. And then continue to pin the side seams together, matching up notches, and the top and the bottom. Doesn't matter if you're doing a tank or a dress, just go ahead and get that all nice and pinned and lined up, ready to sew. And then once everything is nice and pinned, we're going to go over to our sewing machine, and either using a stretch stitch or a serger, we are going to start at the top and sew all the way down to the bottom at a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. If this is your first time sewing up the Zoey, it's not a bad idea to baste this seam first, try it on, make adjustments, and then do your final seam. Once again, when you're sewing, make sure all of the folds and the seam allowances stay pointed towards the band or the strap. Okay, now that that is all stitched, we are going to press those side seam allowances open. And now it's time to completely enclose the strap. So with those seam allowances pressed open and all the seam allowances that attach the strap still being pressed towards the strap, we're going to work our way all the way around in the round from the wrong side, pulling back the folded edge of the strap and making sure that it slightly covers the stitch line where the strap meets the armhole. This can feel a little bit tedious, but just take your time and go slowly. Obviously, I'm using the Heat and Bond soft stretch, which means that I can just use the iron to adhere it in place. But if you're not using the Heat and Bond, I recommend using lots of pins to make sure everything stays in place. When you get to that section that's in between the front and the back, that really does just create the strap, you're just going to line up the folded edges. Okay, it should look like this. Now we're going to go over to our sewing machine, and starting at the underarm, we're going to stitch all the way around that strap, making sure that our stitching is close to that bottom folded edge, and we will be using a stretch stitch for this. When we get to that section, once again, that is just really the strap. You're just going to edge stitch just along that folded edge, catching the other fold underneath, and that will completely enclose that strap. It's a good idea to go ahead and give like a steamed press to your straps now in case they got a little bit stretched out during the construction. But it should look something like this, a really nice clean finish on the outside and the inside. And now it's time for the hems. Now that we're done with option 2 of the strap and side seam attachment, we're onto the hem. This is for all options and all views. So make sure that your Zoey is inside out. I'm going to be using the Heat and Bond Soft Stretch, but you don't have to. To apply the Heat and Bond Soft Stretch, you're just going to need to apply it to the very bottom edge of your Zoey. The Heat and Bond is 5/8 of an inch wide, and the hem press up is also 5/8 of an inch wide. So that makes it really nice and easy to get your hem done. I find that using the Heat and Bond not only works great on the tanks, but it also is really nice for the dress view. Not only does it make it really easy to press it up, but it also gives just a little crispness and weight to that hem that makes it look really nice. After giving it a little time to cool, I pull off the paper backing. And because it's 5/8 of an inch wide, I can just fold the bottom hem up, wrong sides touching by that 5/8 of an inch or the edge of the Heat and Bond. And then I'll go around and I will adhere it with the heat of my iron. Now, of course, if you are not using the Heat and Bond, you're just going to press up the bottom hem by 5/8 of an inch, and you're going to pin it all the way around. Now that the hem's all prepped, let's turn our Zoey right side out. And then we're going to go over to our sewing machine and we are going to stitch the hem up at a 1/2 inch seam allowance from the bottom fold. If you're sewing up the dress view, you can go ahead and stitch the hem at a regular stretch stitch like we've been doing for the rest of the garment. But if you are sewing up view A or view B, I recommend switching over to a regular zigzag stitch where the width of your zigzag is 3 millimeters and the length is also 3 millimeters. This will just give you more stretch for pulling your tank over your shoulders or your hips to get it on. And that's it. The last thing I recommend doing is giving your hem and the rest of your Zoey a nice final press and steam, clipping any extra threads that you have. I sure hope that you found the Zoey Sewalong helpful. If you make up a Zoey, please tag us so that we can see it.